this idea of using an alter ego, it's not about you faking it at a behavioral level. What this is doing is it's drawing out of you the natural abilities that you do have that are laying dormant or trapped because of worrying about what other people are going to think of you.
Yes.
Concerns and worries about something failing or...
So here's the thing. Entrepreneurs, leaders, salespeople, we all want to create consistent, repeatable, and scalable ways to grow our business and our income. And we want to do it better, faster, and more seamlessly. Why? So we can actually enjoy our lives, take vacations, and spend the quality time that we want with the people that we love. How do we do all this without spending a fortune or running ourselves ragged? That's the big question, and this show is dedicated to the answer. Hey, so today we've got Todd Herman on the show. Todd is a performance coach working primarily with executives as well as Olympic athletes. He's the guy that they would call when the athlete is absolutely burning up, falling apart, and crumbling in the moment of truth. And he helps them discover their alter ego. And my hope is you discover yours during this interview. Enjoy my time with Todd. Hey, so Todd, welcome to the show, man.
Mr. Ferry, it is a pleasure.
Mr. Ferry, is my dad here? I appreciate that. So I don't know how we don't know each other, but we know so many of the same people.
Yeah.
I was actually referred to you directly by a good buddy of mine, Zvi, who is the founder and CEO of Contactually.
Yeah.
And then you were just at my event. You know Jay Abraham. You know Sam, our mutual producer.
Yeah.
How have we not met? Where do you live?
Yeah. It's because I'm on the East Coast. I'm tackling the East Coast. You're on the West Coast here.
Got it.
So New York City. I mean, I don't even know. But I've had just for so long, people are like, you and Tom have to connect. You and Tom have to connect.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know if I'm big enough to connect with Tom.
Shut the. Yeah, please. Hi. I didn't have 19, people like bidding to get my book. So
Yeah.
I think I'm soon going to be like, do you remember back in the day when I was able to interview Todd?
Yeah.
Now you can't even get him on the phone.
Yeah.
So, all right. So for the people that, as we just banter and have fun, for the people that don't know who you are,
Sure.
maybe for my listeners, agents, entrepreneurs, owners of companies, startups, give them a little backstory, a little flavor. Who are you? Why should they care? Like what's this all about before we go into this killer book?
Yeah. So I'm a farm kid from Western Canada. Grew up on a big farm and ranch outside of Medicine Hat, Alberta.
Okay, I know Alberta. Yeah, I don't know Medicine Hat, but I love that.
Yeah, so southeastern corner. Grew up, cleaning chicken coops and developing a fairly solid hatred of chickens. They are smelly animals.
Yes.
But I was an athlete and ended up, managing to get myself some football scholarships and playing football at high level as a national ranked badminton player. And one of my superpowers that I developed was kind of my mental game, which ended up getting me into starting a business after I was out of college, working with young athletes all on the 6 inches between their ears.
Nice.
And I don't know about you, but a lot of my life is just sort of me unfolding into and working on things that I was just really curious and passionate about.
Absolutely.
Taking some missteps, of course, along the way. But I ended up building up
They weren't missteps. They were things you needed to learn to figure out what was,
a healthy amount of those.
Yes.
And so I built this sports training business working with pro Olympic athletes. And that evolved into me working with business owners, entrepreneurs, all on performance. And, I just united the world because, from my perspective, some of the biggest issues and things that stop people is the things that are rattling around between their ears. That 6 inches stops. I mean, so many people, they know what they need to be doing. They don't need even more information.
Yes.
But what they do need to do is maybe shift a paradigm or develop a different context about things.
Yes.
And been able to work and travel all around the world. Now live in New York City with my 3 little kids and my wife. And
congrats.
Pumped to be out here talking to you now.
Yeah, man. Love it. And I know you're kind of in the midst of like a huge podcast tour and speaking tour. So maybe just, for the person listening, give them just like, before I got a ton of questions I want to ask.
Yeah.
But the alter ego effect. When I first got this, I saw that word ego and I like alter ego and you're obviously going to explain this whole thing, but like give them the backstory. Like, why did you write this book?
Yeah.
And what is it that you ultimately want the person to get?
Sure.
Like there's a lot of people that talk about that ego word.
Yeah.
But this is a different flavor.
100%.
This is a different, like a totally different hook.
Yeah.
So what's your goal here?
Yeah. So, I mean, my big mission with this is to really bring people back to and understand the one superpower that we as human beings have is our creative imagination. It is the one thing that truly makes us unique on the planet. And and we get beaten out of using it to its full capacity because
You're referring to school.
Yeah.
Religion, parents,
grow up,
job.
Yeah. Environment,
Yep.
So, the great thing about this is every single person that's listening to this right now, you that is listening to this right now, you have used this already.
Yes.
Because it's a part of the human condition. It's a natural part. We all played with this idea when we were kids of like, playing our favorite basketball player or hockey player, or being a superhero for a moment, or a nurse, a doctor, or whatever.
Turning a box into a castle or a car, right? Creativity.
You name it. And then we end up getting told, grow up. And we start to internalize that as, those things that I was doing when I was a child are childish. And so I need to start acting more serious and and acting like an adult.
Yeah.
And we forget that this thing is the very tool that we can use to help us move past insecurities, resistance, and actually honor who you are at your core.
Yes.
So alter egos have nothing to do with being inauthentic or being fake, like the word fake it till you make it.
Sure.
Have nothing to do with it. It's actually you. Its root word actually came from Cicero in 44 BC. He's the one who coined the term alter ego. He's the great Roman philosopher and statesman.
Yes.
And
Stoic.
its true term means the other eye or trusted friend.
Yes.
So an alter ego, this became my secret sauce in pro sports, Olympic sports. I became known as the guy who builds them for athletes.
Yep.
Because I became the guy who would be brought in the 11th hour when someone's in a slump and be like, we're going into the US Open in 3 days, and we understand that meditation is really, really important, but we need something that can work fast, kind of thing.
Yes.
And I became a bit of a quick hit artist that way. And it's because alter egos can just dramatically shift someone's performance just really quickly, because you're using the back door to performance, which is the creative imagination, and you move gracefully around this resistance that naturally stops many people.
So I immediately think of how this relates to not just athletes that you're working with. And I got to give you a little inside scoop.
Yeah.
So my mentor from say age 29 until the day he passed away, which would have been 3 years ago, was a guy named Mike Vance. So if you read anything early on Apple, right, he was Walt Disney's mentor, right? He worked for he was Steve Jobs' mentor.
Yeah.
He worked for Walt Disney, right, for 9 years, was basically in charge of ideas and people development. His whole thing was, Walt, help us express naturally who we are, that child within us, and let's give that experience in everything that we do.
Yeah.
Right? So everything that Mike wrote about was think outside of the box, creativity, that childhood spirit, that authentic self, be who you are. Even if it's outlandish and crazy, we'll find a niche for that.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like along the same lines? I know it's a little more scientific.
Yeah, we're running parallels with it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I'm not saying be childish. I'm saying tap into that childlike genius that we have that doesn't have the layers of expectations built on it yet, or traumas or personal narratives that people have naturally built up over time, right? That crust that we get. And then we end up, those things end up becoming impediments for people. And again, I've worked with people for 16,000 hours plus one-on-one. Now, I have group stuff and all that, but I actually cut my teeth only doing one-on-one stuff. I will happily admit that in the beginning I was not that smart business-wise. And so I didn't know any different. That's how I built my business. But what it's given me is an important insight into what people actually do to get to where they want to go. And here's what I can tell you. My great frustration with the personal development, self-help, and leadership world has been that they have been trotting out ideas that are not proven. It is actually not what people are truly doing to be successwould And one of those golden threads that was starting to weave between my athletes that were consistently performing at a high level was that they would say things like, I step into this other persona, or when I get on the field, I'm doing this, and stage.
I create this state, this energy, this person.
Exactly. And
you know David Goggins?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So we've interviewed, I've known David for a couple of years. He said, when I was a SEAL, I wasn't David Goggins. I became Goggins.
Yeah.
Goggins was the alter ego.
Yeah.
Right. He was the one that could do everything.
Yeah. Well, with this book, I'm hoping to catch a little bit of his tailpipe right now, because his most viral videos are about him talking about his alter ego.
100%.
And all I'm doing now is giving people the exact process. People have been, if you really look at the breadcrumbs, They've been there forever.
Yes.
It's just that, and getting back to your point about, why so many publishers, were, asking me about, or, bidding on the book.
Yes.
I'd come into these meetings in New York, and some of the first things that come out of their mouth is, I feel like I've been doing this all my life. And I'm like, I know you have. You're a human being.
Yes.
And what my
Isn't
mission.
Isn't that great when the publishers read it and they're like, dude. This, you're talking to me.
Yeah.
We're like, we should sell some of these.
I know.
People should get this message.
Like maybe let's put a bid in on this book possibly. But yeah, that's so my ultimate win. I have a friend, Clay Bear, who I want to introduce you to at some point in time. He's phenomenal guy. Yeah. And he says, what's your champagne moment going to be with this book? And I said, when people aren't whispering at tables about using this, that people are like, oh yeah, no, I absolutely use an alter ego to help me go and do the best things in life, so I can bring that, I talk about that heroic self out onto the field of play for you. Like that's my mission, because it is what people use.
Is Clay related to Guy?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
No.
So I know Guy Guy, if you're listening, big shout out to you. Amazing hockey player.
Oh,
played
no.
for the Ducks.
Yeah.
Rick
No, I know. Yeah.
And a really great golfer and just a super fun guy.
Yeah.
So let's go into this. Like one of the questions I wanted to ask was, we keep talking about this alter ego, right? And the note I wrote down was, isn't this really just saying like, don't be yourself?
Yeah.
Like fake it till you make it.
Sure.
Like that's how some people are going to interpret this.
For sure they will. Yeah.
Help us understand.
Yeah. So, and by the way, that's natural.
Yeah.
But the one thing that you need to remember is that who you are is a constantly evolving self.
Yes.
Like the performance that you were getting 8 months ago, 3 years ago is probably different than today. So was that version of you 2 years ago fake?
Yeah.
No,
of course not.
It wasn't. It was
No,
just
that was
the you that you were
me
bringing
at that time.
That was you that were bringing to the table at the time. Now, nothing is more frustrating and can take away someone's confidence than when you get to the end of your day and you put your head on a pillow and you say to yourself, why didn't I speak up? Why didn't I raise my hand?
Yes.
Why didn't I ask for the sale when that person obviously, or my product or service was obviously perfect for them, right? That's when you actually didn't bring who you really are to that moment. That's being inauthentic.
Yes.
You not doing what you know that you can do. And people fundamentally understand this, and that's what makes and causes people to feel and beat themselves up or self-criticize or whatever. So this idea of using an alter ego, it's not about you faking it at a behavioral level. What this is doing is it's drawing out of you the natural abilities that you do have that are laying dormant or trapped because of worrying about what other people are going to think of you.
Yes.
Concerns and worries about something failing, or again, I talk about it in the book, how there's three really common, or there's three hidden forces that the enemy likes to use. Carl Jung talks about the shadow, right?
Yes.
And so in the book, just as a kind of a great theme to bring through it, I kind of use a bit of a comic book theme with it, or my mentor Joseph Campbell's hero's journey with it.
I was saying hero's journey. Yep.
Exactly. And so there's an enemy that pulls you into the shadows, and he uses like three really sinister hidden forces. One is imposter syndrome, that you have dismissed away a lot of your achievements and your wins to luck, right place, right time, and things like that. Another one is tribal narratives, I call them. Things like they sit at this layer of our identity where you don't even realize that you're acting through them. Like, you know what? My family have never been an entrepreneur, so why would I be an entrepreneur? Or African Americans can't do that, or insert anyone else, or women or men, or
any label that gives you the negative association to get off the hook for actually succeeding and doing the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that it's actually very common that happens. It's just that it happens at an unconscious level. You don't even realize that you're acting through those things.
Yeah.
And then the third one,
could also be, remember, what school I went to or didn't go to.
Yeah, it's
the
anything
way I
that's
was raised,
larger than
my
you.
parents were divorced, like anything you can't control.
Yeah, anything that's anything that's about attaching you to a group that's larger than you.
Yes.
Your family, your religion, even your country. Oh, Americans don't do it that way, or Canadians, they're so friendly, and like just things like that. And then the final one, which is my experience, which I really had to battle a lot of my life, was just personal trauma. Some people have just been through some extraordinarily hard stuff.
Yes.
And that's actually really how I found and got into the world of mental game stuff. Was I literally got into trying to master my inner game just because out of pure survival. I was unfortunately sexually assaulted when I was 12 by two men over the course of a couple of days at a church camp. And obviously, I had an amazing family, and that ruined me.
Yes.
And I never shared that with anybody until literally just a year and a half ago for the very first time with my wife, because I was running at the red line, revving that engine as hard as I possibly could. And I had achieved a bunch of things in my life, and I had thankfully found strategies like this to help me get there. But I had 3 little kids. I was going through a bunch of, business upheaval with a lawsuit with a former business partner that I was taking to court. And I just couldn't keep that volcanic rage below me anymore.
100%.
And, but my point is, so I moved through that. I would never share this now if I didn't actually, I faced it finally. I got really good friends around me, and I found just phenomenal professionals to get me to really face it and move through it.
So like, not everybody listening, but I am like yourself. I literally looked at the first, 20 years of my career as almost like a scientist in a laboratory, one-on-one, like 30,000 hours of private sessions the last time I tracked. And that was, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, right? Yeah. The number of people that I've dealt with that have some massive tragedy that they were then able to convert into triumph, but never were able to get satisfaction, never got joy and happiness. There was never enough.
You're naming it.
Right? Like, so maybe just speak, I know it's off topic.
No, this is important though.
But please speak to maybe the person listening who has a loved one that dealt with something like this. And, you could take any horrific label experience and put it on there, right?
Yeah.
I know yours. I've talked to many other men and women that have dealt with that. Yeah. How did you move through it?
Thankfully I had 2 phenomenal parents, and a piece of advice that my mom gave me when I was leaving the farm, because they knew that, I've got 2 older brothers and a younger sister. They knew that I was the one that was not going to be coming home to the farm ever. Yeah. That I was going to go off and try and conquer the world or whatever Todd's goals were. And she just said, whatever you go and do, always go out and find whoever's the best at it and learn from them. Because they knew that my dad was the best farmer there. He's, and the stats just show it. What he ended up building was incredible. And so I've always thought about that. Whatever the cost was going to be, I was going to go find the best.
Yes.
And so I did. I reached out to friends when I finally got to that point where I first shared it for the first time, and just said, listen, can you refer me to anybody who can help? And a good friend of mine, Jonathan Fields in New York, phenomenal podcast as well, just an amazing human being, put me in touch with this psychiatrist who specifically helps people with young childhood trauma, and having an expert like that navigate that. And then, of course, sharing slowly with good friends about some of the experience, not everything, but just allowing them to through the encouragement of my psychiatrist, is just like encouraging them, allowing other allies to come to your help.
But you're also that old metaphor of you're peeling away these layers and letting people in that you trust, that know have your back. So that's all part of the healing process.
It is. And you can't do it on your own.
No.
That's why I avoided it for so long. And I had this big long post on Facebook where on December 31st, as I was going into my 2019, and I sit down and I talk about this actually with athletes. One of the core things that we teach is, in the context of visualization, is actually very, very challenging to do. Everyone talks about, just visualize. It's not that easy if you haven't trained yourself with it. So the easiest way to do it is to actually do what I teach, which is called scripting, writing it down. Because what it does is it slows down your mental processes. And as you write, because you think way faster than you can write, but when you're writing, the color becomes more,
of course, more
highlighted,
vivid, more clear, more emotional, more intense.
So I was about to script my 2019, because this book is coming out. It's a big year and everything. And the first words that I wrote down were, it just didn't come out the way that I was, my intention was, but it said, I tried to drown myself when I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
And then I got into the story, and I wrote it out so that I could call my parents and all my siblings for the very first time and tell them, because I wanted one cohesive narrative that I could read to them. And so my point about that is I shared it with them, and it was, amazing, brought us closer together. And then I published the post. But that process of constantly bringing more and more allies into my world got me to that final place and got me better and better help along the way.
Yes.
Those quality people. I was like, I've got 3 little children, and I was not going to give them what I call secondhand trauma. I'd been dealing with it.
Okay, speak about that, because this is.
Yeah.
I love you already. This is. I don't know how we haven't met, but thank goodness we did. So speak about that. Secondhand childhood trauma.
Secondhand trauma. I was at Chelsea Piers, where my little kids go to preschool.
For sure.
We just had our little boy, Charlie, and it was a tough childbirth, and my wife and Charlie were recovering, and I was picking up Molly and Sophie, 2.5 and 3, almost 4, put Sophie in the carriage, and then picked up Molly to put her in the carriage. And my oldest, Molly, she's just this extraordinarily emotionally aware kid, and just a sweetheart. And she, as I was putting her in, I didn't even get her butt into the seat, and she looked at me and she put her hand up to my cheek and she said, Daddy, are you happy? And I said, yeah, I'm happy. Why? And she said, oh, because you've been yelling at us a lot lately, and it's making us sad.
Ooh.
I was a puddle.
Yeah.
In Chelsea Piers. I mean, biggest sports complex in Manhattan.
Oh, yeah.
And just stood there and I cried, and I said, I'll get it fixed, honey. And that was the precipitating point. Now, I hadn't shared it with anyone yet. It still took me a few more months. But I was in that moment, I was like, wow, you have been carrying this and you can't hold on to it any longer. And now you're passing just emotional energy onto your kids and giving them secondhand trauma. And I was like, for F that kind of thing. I'm not going to let that happen.
Todd, I'm sitting. So my wife and I started our business. I have 2 boys. They're 6 and 4. And we started the business when they were 2 and 4. We're sitting at our little family restaurant in Corona Del Mar, a place called Sapori's. We're sitting at the same table where we're at, it's the total fam, you know, busy, crazy entrepreneurs, no time to make food, but let's have family dinner. And my wife and I are literally sitting there arguing over some financial something, right, in a startup. And my 6-year-old Michael stops us and says, every time we come to dinner, you guys sit here and argue about the business. Is this all we're ever going to do?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Dude. Yeah. Like, my wife and I looked at each other like, you feel like a failure as a parent.
Yeah.
But then the recognition of, okay, this is what we're doing what are we teaching our kids right now? Like, we were trying to solve complex problems in our business at the dinner table with a 4 and 6. I mean, it was just, looking back, it was bombastic, right? But to think about what we were embedding into so then we had to like consciously shift away from that. And okay, how are we going to control the narrative now? Now I've got both of them that want to come to work with me inside the business. They understand it now, they see it. But I've asked them, like, do you guys remember that? And my older brother would be like, oh yeah, I remember that. He's like, but it seems like you guys have moved beyond that, and like you're in a better place, and you guys worked it out, and kind of keep it in the boardroom. And they don't say but I could. Now my older brother's 19. You don't let that go in the bedroom, do you, Dad? Like that would be bad. But like they get it. Yeah. So that's a huge aha that I think a lot of people maybe lack the self-awareness. Like they weren't blessed to have this beautiful 4-year-old daughter, put her hand on your cheek and like, Daddy, are you happy? Yeah. You know what they do? They just go play video games now. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't, if I can go so far as to say she saved my life, but I talk about in that post that, I attempted suicide 4 times in my life. And you would think that when you're choking down charcoal after you've just swallowed 3 bottles of pills, that you would maybe have an aha that, this isn't working out. The way that you're operating isn't working out. Yeah. But just didn't have the strength to go and, say to someone, hey, this is what's going on, or, just tell this. Yeah. So, but that was what did it right there. A big culture of people that are just either I think it's a lot of men specifically that, they've just been trained like they have to know the answer, take those feelings, suppress them way down inside your stomach, and don't express it, and just be a good soldier and keep marching along. And I mean, probably just like you, I deal with a lot of male and female, and right, like, so you deal with that and you see it. So this book is a way to express it, to maybe clear some of that. I mean, well, for me, so 82% of my pro and Olympic clients
when you're rattling around between the 6 inches of people's ears trying to help them with their mental game and give them strategies and give them new tools to help them, really get into the zone and flow state out there.
Yeah.
And, that's ultimately what we're trying to do. You end up poking little holes that, are sensitive. And then I am not equipped. I stay in my lane of helping people with performance, helping them get the most of their capabilities that they already have. Mm-hmm. And I am not an experienced therapist. So I have a stable of the pros of the pros who I refer off to, and I want them to help. But kind of to your point, there are existing tools that we have. I'm not saying that if you've got trauma that you need to go wait on the sidelines until you get yourself all fixed up.
Heck no.
Most of us do not have that ability.
No
we
way.
still have to, and so
we need to kill and eat.
This becomes an elegant way where you can still move around that, because for whatever reason you can't see success for yourself, but the trusted friend, as Cicero called it, becomes an ally within that can help you navigate that. And now all of a sudden you step out there as, you're like, what, maybe I can't, but man, Tom Ferry could. And these are the things that I really, admire about him. And I'm going to act through that. I give people in the book, literally, that's every step of the process that you need to use. There's no, I give people some extra resources, but the thing I'm really proud about with the book is everything is in there. There's nothing that I held back from people that, causes you to have to go and buy something else. It's there for you. Yeah. And because I didn't want to be that way. Yeah. All the tools are there. But it helps you navigate that. And it is truly allowing you to tap into that massive superpower that we have that has been, muted and dimmed, that creative imagination to help you get out there.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask, and I got to preface it with my mentor, Mike, right? Sitting with him in Miami, 9:00 in the morning. It's typical Mike Vance.
Yeah.
He worked with Steve Jobs, Jack Welch, Mother Teresa while I was working with him.
Oh, geez.
So just picture I'm the fourth call.
Yeah.
Right. So you just talking with Mother Teresa, and the one before that was Steve Jobs. Okay. So he's like, no pressure, kid, but I expect big things from you. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I said to him one time, you met with all these, like he invented the salad bar, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just think about it, like you've been to a salad, like that was one of his inventions, right? Like just one of a million things this guy was a part of. So one day I'm sitting with him and I said, so Mike, you've worked with all these amazing people. What do they all have in common? Mm-hmm. And he said, they've all answered the 5 questions and they live by them. Now, of course, I had like 30 questions I want to ask him, right? Yeah. So of course I'm like, just, get rid of all the notes. I'm like, okay, what are the 5 questions? And I'll just tell you the basics was, hey, why are you on this planet? What is your purpose? Mm-hmm. Right? Which for every human being, Buddha or whoever say, step 1 is like, know your purpose. If you can figure that one out and then live your purpose. But he got to the very end. It was all these, like when where do you see yourself in 20 years? If you're absolutely crushing it. He didn't say it that way, but that was kind of the genesis. Yeah. What's your DNA? What are you naturally gifted at? Do that. Don't worry about anything else. All that kind of stuff. But the last question he asked me was, who would you already be if you were there? Mm-hmm. Who would you like? So when I look at everything you're doing here, I'm like, is this message that you're putting out in the universe? We know it's going to be super effective for an athlete. Yeah. Because, someone like a Michael Jordan or, a Kobe Bryant, right? Yeah. Like they created, I've worked out with Kobe Bryant. He created the Mamba. Yeah. And he wasn't the Mamba in the early. That was when he had some tragedy in his personal relationship and some conflict in the news media that he became the Mamba. Yeah. Right? He chose to be the Mamba.
Exactly.
Is what you're talking about here in this alter ego, is it relatable for a saleswoman, a leader, a startup? Do they need to do that, or can't they just
absolutely
be an entrepreneur?
So one of the
crush it as a sales gal.
Yeah. So one of the key ideas that I'm bringing to people is that is a field of play. So that athlete or that entertainer, people think of Beyonce and Sasha Fierce or Kobe Bryant and the Black Mamba, or and we'll get into kind of the leading story that I talk about with Bo Jackson. But is that it's all about context. We're not building an alter ego for the entirety of all of the landscape of your life. Yeah. It's always in the context of that stage. So in business, that role that you're going, or when you're going home to be that parent, that's a field of play. There's a different aspect of your personality that's being amplified with your kids, hopefully, than when it is in business. Like me, I'm a challenger personality. I coach people to bring out their absolute best performance. If I brought and it'd be very easy for me because I'm in that mode all day long of 8 to 10 hours to bring that home to my kids and just continue to carry that. The last thing my kids want is dad being decisive and confident and articulate. Yes. They want playful, fun, and gentle dad to show up for them, right?
Yes.
And so context that's one of the really important ideas to help you really perform to your best on the important stages of your life.
So I'm going to be Sybil with multiple personalities?
Yeah, well, it's actually, so in the psychology world, a big tenet that has been around for a long time is that they've always felt that the most healthy people mentally were people who had a single self, one identifiable self that they took out into the world. Yeah. It's actually been proven fundamentally wrong. Yeah. And actually they've pointed to the fact that typically if that's how you operate, you actually have high levels of mental health issues, or you have a higher propensity, of mental health issues. And so the largest growing area of study in psychology is this area called multiple self theory, which is the understanding that you have multiple identities that you're bringing to these different stages. And it's not about having multiple personality disorder. It's that you have a healthy understanding that, yes, who I am with my friends is of course different than who I am with my kids.
Yes.
And so if that's the case, who and what do I want to be showing up on that field that's going to get me the result that I'm most looking for? And that's why this is not about you being fake. Inauthenticity is when you're doing things to trick or deceive other people.
Yes.
This is about you understanding that truly at your core, you have this capacity of intention where you can choose and direct your qualities out onto that field so that you win. When I came home, Sophie, my middle daughter, she has a fantastic emotional bandwidth. She has phenomenal highs and she has tantrums that would win her a gold medal.
Yes.
And, so me, tough dad, she has this force called tantrum, and I'm going to meet that force with just me, and I'm bigger, I'm an adult, and of course you're going to dominate them. Well, that would be an 18-minute long tantrum. Mm-hmm. Good luck with that, Todd.
Yeah.
Instead, I was like, wait a second. You have been using this idea of tapping into that trusted friend for such a long time. What is the one quality that you could do in that moment to really get the best result? And I immediately went to Mr. Rogers. If there is someone that I could act to and through in that moment to get the best results for my kids, it would be him. Mm-hmm. And so that's my gentle self that I bring to the table. And the very first time, I could almost get choked up, the very first time that I did it with Sophie, which was the next day, she was having her tantrum. I got down on one knee, just like he would in all of his shows. And I grabbed her and I pulled her in for a hug, and she melted. And it took 8 seconds. Her tantrum was 8 seconds. She was done. And like any kid, they go running off and they've completely forgotten about what their thing was. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? Now inside, I was still having that like normal kind of inner
anxiety
issue. But I chose that path.
Yes.
And that was what I call the heroic self showing up.
Yes.
I suspended my own disbelief about what I could do, but I brought Mr. Rogers in to help me in that moment. And so anyone who's in sales, you might have something, some inner resistance stopping you, but you could tap into someone and something else in that moment of impact, I call it, that could help you to show up as you know that you most want.
Yes.
Which gets you a different result. And that is not you being fake. That is you being the most real you that you can be, because you're actually activating the capabilities that you already have.
100%. Okay, I got to ask this question. I mean, first of all, that was brilliant, right? I'm
on my soapbox with this.
No, man. Like, listen, like this is going to be one of those ones. Like I'm in the middle of the interview, and I'm literally thinking about how much fun it's going to be to listen to the interview. And take note. Now you tell me all this stuff is covered in the book?
Yes, 100%.
This is going to be a heavy read.
It's not, though. I constantly remind people in the book, don't forget. While, yes, people have had difficult things in their life, don't forget. You already know how to do this.
Yeah.
I have simply codified the process for people, but you already, all I'm doing is this is like a great remembering.
Yeah.
This is causing people to remember that you've already done this, to play with this.
Yeah.
And you don't even need to use every single step that I talk about.
No.
Not even close, to tap into its power.
Yeah. I love it. Okay. Something that caught my eye. Ready?
Yeah.
You talk about the power of enclothed cognition.
Yeah.
What the hell does that mean?
So enclothed cognition is this psychological...
I know both words. What the hell does it mean?
This is the teaching point of the day. All right.
The word of the day is
enclothed cognition. So there's a psychological phenomenon that we have where we will ascribe meaning and story to the things that we wear, right? Ever heard of the idea that, dress well, act well,
Sure,
kind of thing?
of course.
You look your best, you feel your best, you're going to, get your best.
Yep.
Well, that's actually in cognition in action. And to explain this out, the Kellogg School of Management did this study around it, and they brought a bunch of students into a room. Have you ever seen that kind of word puzzle where it has the word of a color, green, but it's colored in a different color? So green, but it's in yellow.
Yeah.
And then red is in blue and all that. So there's a bunch of boxes with those words on this puzzle, and these students have to come in and they've got to say the word, not the color. And it's because our brains process color before language.
Yeah.
And they're going to time them for their accuracy, the number of mistakes, the detail, and how quickly they can do it in. And so they bring the students in and they track each person's results. They leave, then they bring in another group, and this time they hand them a white coat and they tell them that it's a painter's coat. And they put on the painter's coat and then they do it. All right. Then they bring in the third group and they hand them the same white coat. And this time they tell them it's a lab coat or a doctor's coat. And then they do it. Well, the results between the people who wore the painter's coat and the plain clothes was nothing. There was no difference whatsoever. Because when you think about when you're putting on a painter's coat, you're activating in your mind the qualities of someone who's creative, expressive. But for that task, being creative and expressive wouldn't have helped you.
No.
But the people
Putting
who
on
were
a lab coat.
But the people who wore the lab coat or the doctor's coat made less than half the mistakes, and they did it in less than half the time as everyone else. Why? Because they enclosed their mind in the cognitive abilities of a lab person or a doctor who is methodical, careful, calculating, detail-oriented. So they activated those inner qualities and their results changed. Now, was that them being fake? No, it wasn't them being fake. That was just them simply acting to and through a new way of thinking.
Yes.
So
it almost impacts their physical state, their physical, emotional, cognitive state.
Put on a police uniform and see if your physical state changes. Absolutely.
I was thinking of like when I was a salesperson, like putting on a Superman cape or watching Star Wars movies and wishing like I had like an imaginary lightsaber, closing my eyes while I was on sales calls, talking to people like I had the Force.
Dude, I need to send you, so I'll send you a photo, but
I love you just called me dude. That just warms my heart.
Well, sorry, I apologize because I work in sports as well. So I've got a lot of, and these young kids are a lot younger than me now. But anyway, but I've got a Darth Vader helmet. I have a Darth Vader helmet, like working Darth Vader helmet. And I am not a marketing person, but there's times where I have to write things.
Yes.
And I love to put on my Darth Vader helmet because it would be so easy for me to get caught up in my own. I've got dyslexia as well.
Yes.
But when I put on my Darth Vader helmet, it's like, no. He just slashes through. It doesn't care about the judgment or anything like of others.
Yes.
I just write. And I mean, do I wear it the entire time? But what is it? It's me being playful. For someone who struggled in my regular life, right, with so much crap in my head, I was using these things to be a little bit more playful as well sometimes. But
I love it.
to this point of enclosed cognition, what we do then when we're using this idea is we find a totem or an artifact to help represent the qualities that we want to show up on that field. So for me, when I started in business, I was 21 and I looked like I was 12.
Yes.
I was so insecure about what other people were thinking of me. No one's going to listen to me on stage. How could this person even stand up there and talk? He hasn't had enough,
I don't know
experience.
I don't know what that's like, man.
Yeah. Right. And so I used, when I played football, my alter ego was Geronimo. Walter Payton and Ronnie Lott were a part of it.
Yep.
And so was this tribe of Native American warriors. Where I grew up in southern Alberta, it is rich with Native American history. And so we had fire rings from when Sitting Bull came across the border and he fled from the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Actually, our land and near our land was where they had came to until they finally settled in southern Saskatchewan. But so I used that in football, and then I was thinking to myself, wait a second. I use that on that field. Why can't I use an alter ego when I go out into the business world?
Of course.
Geronimo was a little bit, but that wasn't his skills weren't going to help me on the.
No.
So I thought to myself, well, I'm like, wait, if I could just activate like my inner Superman. And so I started thinking about glasses. And then immediately I was like, wait a second, all my best friends that were brilliant in school all had glasses. So I went out to Lens Crafters in West Edmonton Mall, which was the largest mall at the time. and I bought a pair of non-prescription glasses. And that was when I did my reverse
Ta-da.
Superman.
Exactly.
He put on glasses to become Clark Kent, to be the mild-mannered version that the rest of society that accepts.
Yes.
I put on the glasses to be my Superman version of myself.
Bingo.
And when you think about how most people act with their results, most people are going out as a Clark Kent. Mm-hmm. And when you think about who's the alter ego, Superman or Clark Kent? People, when I've asked people in audiences, they say Superman because they think alter ego as power. And I'm like, no. The alter ego is Clark Kent. And so what I challenge people with is most people are walking around as probably a more fake self than what's really inside. And so if I can give you a tool to help you activate the real heroic you that you've got, then I'm happy to do that. And that's what happened to me. I got out of my own way and I acted through that alter ego. And at one point in time, I share this quote from Cary Grant, the great golden era actor from Hollywood, 1940s, 50s, well known for being debonair and charismatic. And he had this quote at the end of his career where he said, "I pretended to be somebody I wanted to be, or I became that person. But at some point, we merged." And the only thing I would change about that is I activated the person I wanted to be.
Todd, say the quote one more time.
He said, "I pretended to be somebody I wanted to be, or I became that person. But at some point in time, we merged." And so when you think about your current performance and the things that you might not be happy with, think of it like a 2-circle Venn diagram. There's a circle of your current results, but there's this vision of what you know that you want to go out and do. And the bridge to help bring them together is the creative imagination and tapping into an alter ego that helps bridge that. And then at one point in time, like I did, I realized, wait a second, I am confident, I am decisive and articulate, and I'm not even wearing my glasses anymore. So I became the person that I wanted to be.
Bingo. But you first had to identify, who do I need to be?
Exactly.
I go back to my mentor. It's the same question. He's like, who is that guy already 20 years from now?
100%.
Let's analyze that. Let's articulate it. Let's codify it. And then let's start being that person. Mm-hmm. John Wayne, I think, had a very similar quote because, John had that same, he started out one way and became what we all think of as this legendary John Wayne human being.
Yeah.
And look, that could just be Madonna. I mean, I just started thinking of all these, this whole enclothed bit also. Yeah. It also reminds me of every athlete I've ever met that does say, "Oh man, in the playoffs we don't shave." Yeah. Right? Yeah. That I wore the same pair of underwear until I got to the majors. Yeah. I'm like, really? He's like, really? Really? I'm like, really? Really? I mean, it's right. Like, but I've said to people plenty of times, hey, if you have an outfit that makes you feel unstoppable, wear that on every business appointment you go on. Like, make that a part of, like, go buy 10 black suits if that makes you feel comfortable, right? Like, is there something to that?
100%. So I'll share one story that I'll kind of, this is my Easter egg.
Bring it home, baby.
This is my Easter egg in the book. So the cover of the book has a pair of glasses, right? Yes. And, I've got perfect vision, 2015. I continue to wear glasses now. I mean, when I got glasses, that was not when wearing glasses was like a stylish thing to do. Yes. The optometrist even said, he's like, "But you've got perfect vision." And I'm like, "Can you just give me the freaking glasses, please?" Nowadays, people wear them for style and dress, right? Sure. So that's what I use them for now. Yeah. Also as a bit of a totem to other people to let them know that this is cool. Like, this is totally natural. Yes. But, so people think, like friends were like, "Oh, it's interesting that you put your glasses." And I'm like, "No, it wasn't that." And then they go, "Oh, it's the Clark Kent Superman thing. Oh, that was smart." And I'm like, "No, it's not. Those are actually the replica of a pair of glasses of an extraordinarily important person that lived in the 20th century that led one of the most important movements in American history." I was doing a speech a long time ago, and I talked on stage about the mental game and the inner game and how I use glasses as, to step into this, better version of myself so I could do the things that I wanted to go and do, and not let resistance get in my way. And afterwards, this lady came up to me and she said, "I loved your talk, and specifically, I loved that idea that you shared around the glasses. Interestingly enough, Martin didn't need glasses either." And when I looked down at her name badge, it was Coretta Scott King.
Wow.
Martin Luther King had 2015 vision as well. Yeah. And he wore glasses as a way to step into what he called his distinguished self. And as Coretta told me in that moment, she said he felt like he was carrying such an important mission, and he was on such an important movement. Mm-hmm. He didn't want to get in the way of that movement with his own insecurities. So he put on the glasses when he was doing his deep thinking to step into that distinguished self that would take the slings and the arrows of criticisms for his more gentle self or his core self or what precious self, whatever it is, right? That we're worried about getting those arrows. But he wasn't going to let that get in the way of the things that were really important to him. So he wore those glasses to get into the distinguished self and really do the hard thinking that he needed to do. And it would be hard to argue that we aren't grateful for the fact that he went and did that. And now, and I never ever shared that story until just recently, because that was a personal moment between Coretta and I. And, I didn't necessarily want the challenges of other people who are like, oh, really, you met Curtis Conklin. But now there is a monument to Martin Luther King in the Atlanta Hartsfield Airport, where his glasses and a few other items are on display. And there's a card that says, Martin Luther King never needed glasses, and he used these to step into his distinguished self. And they're on loan from the Martin Luther King Foundation that Coretta had. And I've shared that story with...
That is the raddest story I've heard in like 5 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the thing that I'm so passionate with this is like, this is going to be everyone else's story.
Yes.
Go back to this creative imagination. It's like, there's so much of you that can get unlocked when we start playing with this idea. And it's not weird. It's not strange. I'm telling you, and that's why it's so important for me to share lots of stories in the book. It's such a normal thing to do.
Yes.
It's not childish.
Yes.
Life is challenging, especially for those of us that are out there striving and trying to grow and, impact other people with whatever it is that we're trying to do. And if we can do this and also be playful and have fun with it, I mean, that's where I needed to go.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay, I have to cut for a commercial break really fast here. Today's show is brought to you by LensCrafters. In case you're wondering, just go to lenscrafters.com/Todd and Tom and get your...
I'm trying to do a partnership with Warby Parker now, because that's where I get my glasses. So, please return my phone calls.
Yes. Oh my God, that is so class. I'm sorry, I had to do it.
That's gold. That's
okay,
gold.
so as we wrap it up, man, it's been really cool getting to know you. And I can't wait. It's not often I want to go back and listen to my own interview. Yeah. Right. I can't wait to devour the book. Guys got to buy this book. Podcast, or audio, Audible. Yeah. Or David Goggins' book. Yeah. He sends me an advance copy and then he sends me the Audible. And I was like, dude, I throw the book in the trash. He's like, I signed it. I was like, okay, well, I'll get it out. But the audio was so incredible. Yeah. Right. I know it's your work, and people are gonna have different modalities.
I narrated it too. I mean, again, it was my when they said, hey, do you want us to get in someone else to read for you? We actually suggest not, because you've got at least an adequate voice to do this. So so when I'm telling the stories, obviously I can tell the stories in the inflection of how they happen, and I encourage you to get both. Have something in your. I talk about the importance of when you're making change happen, having something in your physical environment is one of the most underrated things that you can do. 100%. So having that thing stare back at you, but then listening to it, do both.
Powerful. Man, thank you so much. Where, if they wanted to find you, I assume they just Google you and you're going to...
I'll be
Twitter, Instagram.
ToddHerman.me is my home base on the internet.
Cool.
If they want to learn more about this, alteregoeffect.com. But ToddHerman.me is going to have all the stuff there for you too.
Man, this was super cool. It's very powerful. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it, buddy. Hey, so there you have it, Todd Herman. That was one of those interviews we both, when we finished, said we could have done this for 5 more hours. He's just that kind of human being. I really hope you take the time to pick up his book, get the audio program, listen to it, devour it, and then send me a comment. Let me know what you think, because my hope is that you'll be able to discover your alter ego, that black mamba to your Kobe Bryant. Really cool. Anyway, so as we wrap it up, I do want to say to you, this is a new podcast for us, and I want you to know that you listening really means the world to me, and the comments and the likes and the hearts and all that good stuff. Just know this, I'm paying attention, and I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Talk to you next week on our show. Just a little heads up, next week, if you're the kind of person that wants to build a big business, if you're looking to hire, train, develop, retain, and ultimately succeed with a sales team, you're going to love my show. I've got 3 of the best team leaders on the planet talking about their best hacks, best practices, best approaches, including how they even let people go. If you want more information about this episode, including my show notes, mentions, links, and everything else, make sure you visit tomferry.com/podcast. That's tomferry.com/podcast. Thanks again, and talk to you soon.